Hi, welcome back. My name's Chris from OuiCommunicate, and today we're going to talk about verb groups. Are they necessary? Do they serve a purpose in French? Is it worth knowing any of the 4 verb groups? Am I absolutely wasting my time learning them? Or on the contrary, do they serve any sort of purpose? That's what we'll be talking about today. Say a word about OuiCommunicate. Who is OuiCommunicate? Well, we're sort of like the ace up the sleeve of the adult learner. We're sort of like the hidden weapon of the adult learner who wants to get the job done, who says, okay, this French thing, can we do this thing already? Can I get it done? Can I put it behind me? Can I learn French with a purpose, on a definite timeline? Can we do this thing? Doesn't want to sit in indefinite classes with no timeline. That's what OuiCommunicate does. We cater for the adult learner who doesn't have indefinite time and who wants to see the end of it. Okay, let's talk about verb groups. You might already know that in any given sentence there are different types of words. One word is not another, and within these words there are nouns, there are adjectives, there are verbs, and if you start to recognize them, you know what you're looking for, it gives you more insight into your learning. Now in French, there are 4 verb groups, and I'll give you an example for each. By the way, a verb is an action, such as walking, sleeping, mowing a lawn. They're actions. I'll give you an example for each. A typical ER verb would be manger, that's the action of eating. We had to name the action of eating. What do you call the action of eating in French? We call it manger. Now this verb as it is in no particular tense. It's just the action of eating. It's not in the present, the past or the future. It's the action of eating. Manger. You notice it ends in 2 letters, ER. That's why it's an ER verb. Manger. Now the next one is the OIR group. These ones end in OIR. Typical example might be avoir. Avoir is the action of having. You'll notice that OIR are the 3 last letters, which effectively places it in the OIR group. And by the way, I'm giving you these in no particular order. Just happen to start with the ER. Now we're talking about the OIR ones. So avoir is the action of having. We also have the IR ones, such as partir. Partir, departing, the action of going away, leaving. Partir, it ends in IR, which means it's an IR verb. And finally we have the RE group. Prendre, the action of taking. How do you call the action of taking in French? We say prendre, to take. 2 last letters are RE, that's why it's an RE verb. So far, so easy. It's not anything anyone can't understand. Now why would anyone ever want to know this, you might ask? Is there any sort of purpose? Is there any sort of interest in knowing this? My answer is predictability. When you learn a language is a system. And when you learn a language, you essentially have 2 choices. If you compare it to a river, you can either go downhill, downstream, or upstream. Those are the 2 approaches. Now, the stupid way of doing things is to go downstream. And these are your podcasts, your films, your apps, anything to do with immersion. And the YouTube teachers love the downstream approach. The ready-made phrases, the parrot method. Répétez après moi. Le matin, je bois mon café. So here we're repeating phrases. That's the parrot method, which sits comfortably downstream. There's a famous French comedian, OuiCommunicate. He's deceased now, sadly. Very, very funny. And in one of his skits, he used to play the role of a teacher. Repeat after me. I'm doing it very badly for anyone who's heard of OuiCommunicate and used to impersonate a typical French teacher. No, in this case, he impersonated a typical English teacher. He had this, the traditional black gown. Repeat after me, and that was part. It's a classic in French culture, OuiCommunicate. However, despite all this laughing and joking about traditional methods, I found that this method is actually quite popular on YouTube. People love it, people can't get enough of it. I discovered a teacher the other day, a young girl, does the parrot method. People love it, people are delighted. You should see the comments, hundreds of positive comments. All she does is read phrases, tells people to repeat them, people love it. People are so touched by it, it's like they've witnessed the sublime. And I hear that a lot of them were so overwhelmed by the divine that they organised mass dives off the cliffs of Dover. It's like Ringo Starr said, what do you do when you've been in the Beatles? You know, what meaning do you give your life after you've witnessed the parrot method? It's just too beautiful. The sublime is just too powerful. You know why you Americans love us Brits so much? It's because we're cheeky. That's why John Oliver, Ricky Gervais and Piers Morgan are so popular. And as my American wife would describe the Brits, they're annoying Brits. That's how she calls us. So no offence to anyone who's decided to look downstream rather than upstream. It is your time after all. You use your time as you see fit. So let's go back to our verb groups. Verb groups might appear to be extremely boring. Oh no, not verb groups. Can't I listen to a podcast instead? No, you can't. You're going to study verb groups. Now the fact is that when you study verb groups and you know what they mean, you actually know what you're doing, which is no small advantage. And to explain the idea a bit better, I said that each verb in the French language, every single one, we're talking about thousands of verbs, is in one of these 4 groups. Just checking I have 4 fingers up. 4 groups, yes, 4 fingers for 4 groups. And knowing this has several advantages. 1, you learn a thing once and you apply it 1,000 times, which I think is more clever than the opposite. 2, you know where you're going. I'll get serious here for a second. Learning a language is never the language part that's hard. It's not the actual language that you find hard. French is not hard. It's navigating the map of the language. That's what's really hard. Knowing what's expected of you and where you stand on the map. If you don't have a sense of perspective, if you don't know where you are, that's when it gets hard. A person who's been learning French for 5 years or more, 4 years even, is obviously going around in circles on the map. And that's where the tutor comes in, because the tutor knows the map. The tutor can tell you where you are on the map and what you still have to accomplish. But as a student, it's very, very hard to gain a sense of perspective. And that's what costs you time. Because truthfully, honestly, a year is all that's needed. And your second year, you just improve on your fluency. 1 year. Okay, let's talk about our verbs now. Manger means to eat. It's the action of eating. It ends in er. Manger. Okay, if you can say I eat, you eat, he eats, we eat, they eat in the present tense, je mange, tu manges, il mange, elle mange, nous mangeons, vous mangez, il mange, you can apply it to 1,000 more verbs, and that's the whole idea. That's why it's so important. It's all you need to do. It's all you need to do. There's only one that behaves in a different way, and that's the action of going, aller. Then again, all we're asking you to do is to learn 6 words. Is it hard? Of course it's not. I go, you go, he goes, je vais, tu vas, il va, nous allons, vous allez, ils vont. Okay, we've just learned 6 words. It's hardly a case of of having our brains explode. And that's the ER ones out of the way. You learn one verb, you apply it to 1,000 more. It's all we're asking of you. It's that simple. And before I move on to the next class, I'm quickly showing you the worksheet that you'd have to know to master the ER verbs. Honestly, does it look like hard work? It's all you need to do. It's not that much. And you can apply that to 1,000 more verbs. Okay, let's now talk about the second group, the OIR ones. We chose as an example avoir, which is the example of having. It ends in OIR, which effectively makes it an OIR group. Now, if you know where you're going, you know where you're going. That's the whole advantage. And if you've taken the OuiCommunicate French course, you'll also know that there's only about 5 or 6 of these that you would ever realistically use. There's only about 5 or 6 of the OIR verbs that you would realistically ever use within a whole year. However, they are super important for different reasons. Small in number, big in importance, the OIR ones. Interestingly, the OIR ones are a closed group. We're not making any new ones. It's quite interesting that each time a new verb is made, it's automatically an ER one, which is quite an advantage. So we're not making any more OIR verbs. Learn them once, know them forever, be done with it. Obviously, we don't learn the OIR verbs like we learn the ER verbs. These are different groups. So the OIR ones are a very different breed. But you can also recognize a pattern, or rather a non-pattern, but at least you know there's a pattern. The pattern is that they're very unpredictable. But at least you know it. I'll show you the worksheet for the OIR ones. Judge for yourself if it seems like hard work. And while we do that, I'll be giving you the conjugation of avoir, the action of having in the present tense. J'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont. It's quite unpredictable, which is why it's a separate class. Let's now move on to the IR verbs. The IR verbs are a very small group also. You recognize them because they have IR as two last letters. On my worksheets there's only about 10 that you would realistically ever use. It's a very small list, and once you know that a lot of them take a double SS, you're good. You know what to look for. Let's take as an example finir, which is the action of finishing, to finish something. Je finis, tu finis, il finit. Not very hard, we've just cut off the two last letters. Nous finissons, there's a double S here. Vous finissez, ils finissent. As I said, there's very often a double S that grafts itself onto the stem, but once you know that, there's no more surprises. Then of course there's the irregular ones. All you need to do is look at them and memorize them. You notice that venir, the action of coming, and tenir are different. So je viens, tu viens, il vient, nous venons, vous venez, ils viennent. That's an irregular one that you would realistically use. And tenir, to hold. Je tiens, tu tiens, il tient, nous tenons, vous tenez, ils tiennent, is a second major irregular one. Then of course we have mourir, which personally doesn't make its way into my conversation very often, but mourir means to die. Je meurs, tu meurs, il meurt. Nous mourons, vous mourrez, il meurt. And that's it with the IR ones. And number 4, the fourth class, is the RE ones, which, as we said, end in the letters RE. You need to know that a lot of them are unpredictable, but not in the same way that the OIR ones are unpredictable. They're unpredictable, but in a different way, but the advantage is, at least, you know it. Let's start with the 4 irregular ones. There's être, the action of being. There's boire, the action of drinking. There's faire, the action of doing or making, and there's dire, the action of saying. Now the advantage is, of course, once you know this, you know where you are on the map of French, and there's a lot less surprises. You know where you're going. You just need to study these 4. After that, what you need to know about the RE verbs is that very often they'll have a new letter at the end of the verb, but also new letters that are added in the middle at the end of the stem. For example, défendre, the action of defending. Je défends, all of a sudden we have a silent S but also a silent D. Je défends, tu défends, il défend, that means to defend in the present tense. Nous défendons, vous défendez, ils défendent. And this also characterizes the RE verbs. Now you actually hear the silent D, the last letter of the stem, for il and elle in the plural, which we didn't have for the other class of verbs. Ils défendent. You can hear the silent D at the end. Then as a third pattern of behavior, we have all of those that take a single S or a double S, but it could be other letters also. I have all of this in my exercises so that there's no more surprises. The example of the verb lire, for example, which is the action of reading. Je lis, tu lis, il lit, nous lisons, vous lisez, ils lisent. All of a sudden an S has appeared. And if we look at the example of the verb disparaître, which means to disappear, we'll see a case with a double S. Je disparais, which means I disappear. Je disparais, tu disparais, il disparaît. Nous disparaissons, vous disparaissez, ils disparaissent. As we said, there's often a new letter that grafts itself onto the stem, and that's all you need to know. That's it, that's all you need to do. It's as easy as that. You do your exercise sheets, you learn the present tense in 2, maybe 3 days, maybe 4 if you really want to stretch it, and Bob's your uncle. There's no more I can teach you. There's nothing more. There's no final boss. That's it. That is the skill. That's the skill, as demonstrated. Now, of course, there is also a stupid way of doing things, which is to hope that exposure to podcasts will teach you this, or playing with an app is going to do the trick. Or scratching your head each time you encounter a new French verb and say, oh, that's a bit odd, it didn't behave like the other one I saw. When you think of it, the method I propose mimics the way life works, but somehow language learning seems to answer to different rules, different principles. Now imagine being surprised each time your car runs out of petrol. Driving along, it stops moving. And you say, oh, it's funny, I was going to the supermarket and my car stopped. Then you add petrol into it. And the next time, it stops moving. And you say, that's strange, I was driving to the park and my car stopped moving. I need to put more petrol into it, that's really odd. If we look at individual phenomenons, we'll never understand the general principle, we'll never understand the rule. If we're surprised each time the car stops moving, it means we haven't understood the general rule. The general rule being that you have to put gas, petrol in your car for it to move. It's the same thing for verbs, exactly the same thing. These are universal principles. So to answer the question once and for all, yes, it is absolutely necessary to know the verb groups in French. You have to know that there are 4 of them to understand and predict their behaviour. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer and you will be learning French for 4 or 5 years. Most importantly, you won't know where you are on the map of French. You'll be learning it for years. And I said, it's the number 1 difficulty in French. It's not the language. It's not knowing what's expected of you and not knowing where you are on your journey. It's the absence of perspective. My name's Chris. I teach French. Find me at OuiCommunicate.com. Make your journey easier. See you soon.